just pretending that I'm at Decatur Blue and Gold Academy and looking out across the room and seeing all of your happy, smiling, alive bodies. And we are all getting used to our new way of doing meetings. So we have around 90 people who have signed up for this webinar, and we're very happy for your trust in us to provide worthwhile program for you this morning. So just a little bit of background information before we get started. Kylie Gerlach, who is our Director of Operations, is the host for this meeting, so she will be operating the different components of Zoom for us, so thank you, Kylie. And also would like to introduce a new cellmate that we have, Jeremy Els. And Jeremy is the Director of Rural Education for CEL. So Jeremy, if you're online, could you unmute and just introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. Jeremy Eltz, yeah, as Sandy said, Director of Rural Education. So my work with CEL will be to create the state's first rural education collaborative. So we're trying to look at connecting all rural schools in our state and try to address the inequities that are within those school systems. So hopefully we can get that going this year.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jeremy. We're just thrilled to have you as a part of our CEL team. So we would like to start out with some celebrations. And recently we have endorsed 2 more schools into our early college network. So we say congratulations to Whitewater Career Center, Steve Duncan and Sonny Jones for their great work. They hosted a visiting team back in last day of February, and we are happy to announce them as an endorsed school. And likewise, we went to the other end of the state to visit Hobart High School, Hobart University, and we're very proud to announce that Hobart is also a fully endorsed early college high school. So congratulations to Tim Krieg and Dr. Peggy Buffington and Mrs. Adams and Mrs. Schuneman and all of the other great people at Hobart that have worked hard to have an amazing program for the students there. So we have a few more endorsement visits to do yet this spring, and we are transitioning obviously to online, and we're hoping those will go well and that we will have good results from our visits. So today, to get started on our webinar, just a few of the logistics for today. If you would mute your microphone, and then Kylie will unmute you if we for questions and for when speakers are ready. And we also, when we start our panel, we will have the speaker view. You'll be able to see the speakers as they are presenting and answering our questions. So we are ready to begin with our first presenter. And it's
Sandy, I want to jump in just for a second.
Sure.
Can folks use a chat room too if they have questions?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
You can, at the bottom of your screen, you can add your question, and then Kylie will be moderating those questions as they come in. So thank you, Janet. And Janet's online, of course. Janet, our executive director. So, okay, so let's get started with our first presenter. And we have the Vice President for Academic Affairs from Ivy Tech, Russ Baker, is with us. So he's going to be talking about TSAP. So I'll turn it over to Russ.
All right, thank you. Really honored to be able to be part of this meeting today. When I first was contacted by Janet, of course, a couple months ago, we were planning on being in person. So I'm sorry that I'm only seeing electronic pictures of most of you, but it's always exciting for me to get to share this initiative with an audience that I think most of you are aware of TSAP. You know something about it. Some of you know a lot about it. but this is an initiative that we at Ivy Tech are strongly supportive of. But one of the things I usually say when I begin presenting to audiences like this one is that despite despite the fact that some people think this was an Ivy Tech initiative, it was not. So this was something that the state of Indiana actually adopted the legislature several years ago. And while Ivy Tech is supportive of it, this was not our idea. So TSAP is not an Ivy Tech initiative. The TSAP, which stands for Transfer Single Articulation Pathways, was an idea that really came through the legislature. And one of my colleagues that I've worked with a lot over the years at the Commission for Higher Education, Terry Lambert, is in the meeting today and going to be presenting later on. Terry has been very involved from a state leadership perspective on the TSAP initiative. And she'll probably catch me on a couple things if I say something that's not entirely accurate. So I appreciate her being part of this. On your screen right now, you should see a document, and I'm going to change my view here a little bit if I can. You'll see a document on your screen that shows the number of completions that Ivy Tech has had so far. This initiative started in the academic year 2015-2016. So we had the first students in the fall of 2015 who were able to enroll at either Ivy Tech or Vincennes University. So again, this is not just Ivy Tech. Vincennes is a participant in the TSAP initiative as well. And in a little bit, we'll talk more of the details about how this works at when students complete their 2-year degree and move on to the 4. But I want to kind of provide you first with a broad overview of the number of students and the number of completions we've had at Ivy Tech in the TSAP program. By the way, most of you are familiar with another acronym that's related to this and actually came first, which is the STGEC, or Statewide Transfer General Education Corps. We're not going to talk about that today specifically. That actually came first in the legislation. The STGEC legislation came first. That provided that 30-hour general education core. And then the next year, the legislation, which had the same name intentionally both years, SEA 182, the next year we added the TSAPs on top of the STGEC. So the important thing for you to know as you work with students and as you talk with parents and all the stakeholders that are involved and interested in this is that the STGEC and TSAP are completely complementary, and they were built intentionally to be that. So again, back to what you're seeing on your screen, the graphs there simply denote the number of completions that we have had at Ivy Tech. And you can see the very first completions that we had were in the summer of 2016 when we had 7. Again, the program began in academic year 2015-16. So what happened is we had students that could transfer in credit into the TSAP program and were actually able to finish after we had just had the first year of the program. And then you can kind of follow along. Spring 2016, 12, summer 2016, there were 7. By the fall of 2016, there were 42. And you can watch the numbers grow in subsequent semesters. Our largest number of graduates yet, as you can see, was in a semester, was in the spring of 2019, 1 year ago, when we had 828. We then had 230, we have the most graduates, like most universities, in the spring semester. So we had 828 completions just last spring. We had 239 more in the summer, and then 578 in the fall of 2019. So that's the calendar year of 2019. You can see how the numbers are growing. Probably interesting to see the academic years, and that is showing 1,492 completions in academic year 2018-2019. So that illustrates pretty clearly the number is growing. And our enrollments in TSAP programs across Ivy Tech campuses are growing greatly as well. Academic year 2019-20, of course, is still in progress. So the 578 you see there clear to the right is only for the fall semester. So I'll move on to the next slide. This shows the completions by major. And I won't go into this a lot, except to say that as you might not be surprised to see, nursing is the largest in terms of number of completions. Business administration is second highest, and elementary education is third. And then comes criminal justice, and then social work, and then there are a number of others with lower numbers of graduates. I actually skipped one of these that I wanted to show. Okay, yeah. I apologize. I wanted to start with this one. So, you know, keeping in mind the number of graduates and the participation that you've seen, on this screen, you see the programs where a transfer single articulation pathway is offered. Business, computer science, criminal justice. Sorry, I keep hitting a screen that's moving it. Scroll down a bit. These are the areas where the TSAP programs are available. It is a block transfer program, and that's an important, very important element of this whole initiative. Just like STGEC, the TSAP programs are not based on credit for credit, course for course matching. And again, we'll get into some of the details in a second, but the program is based on all state institutions that are four-year institutions and the two community colleges, Vincennes and Ivy Tech, offer these programs, and they're based on competencies rather than courses, as you see that bullet point. What that means is when a student completes a TSAP associate degree in one of the areas you see listed there, and they get accepted into a four-year institution, all the credit, the 60 credit hours, in a couple of cases it's a more than 60, but we'll try to stay big picture here. In the 60 credit hours all transfer so that the student transfers as a junior into that four-year institution if they are admitted. It is important to note right now that admission is not guaranteed. You can see there's a minimum cumulative GPA of 2.0 for a student to graduate with their two-year TSAP degree. But getting a 2.01 or a 2.0 may not mean that that student gets admitted into any four-year institution. So admission is not guaranteed with the TSAP. Ivy Tech is actually working on an initiative right now this year, which is a guaranteed admission initiative, and every four-year system in the state of Indiana has indicated they want to participate. It's been a little bit knocked off schedule, the initiative, by the current situation, but we have got agreements already with Indiana State and with Ball State, and more are coming, where students will be guaranteed admission in certain fields if they complete the TSAP. And usually that's going to require them to get a GPA that's significantly higher than 2.0, probably more like 2.75 or 3.0. So Right now, though, I do want to make sure it's known that the TSAP is not guaranteed admission. But if a student graduates with their AS degree in criminal justice or in elementary education or in business, any of the programs you see there to the left, and they get admitted into the four-year university, the credits transfer seamlessly so that they have junior status. It's not course for course matching, and that's really important to understand as part of this initiative. Okay, I'm going to switch over now to some guidance that gets into, this actually comes from directly the website that is the Commission for Higher Education offers. So you can go to this and find all of this on the Commission for Higher Ed website. It's also in the Transfer In website as well. But this is a document that was, again, not prepared specifically for Ivy Tech, but for anyone to go to that wants to find out information about the TSAPs and how they work. So let's see here. I won't go into all of these, but I did want to highlight a couple of things for you that I think are important to know. First of all, as you work with students, it's very helpful for you to encourage them to go to the website of the university where they eventually plan to transfer after they get their degree at either Ivy Tech or Vincennes. As you can see here on the page, it's important for individual students to review the published TSAP admission criteria at the specific university or campus to which they wish to transfer. And they should do this early on. One thing that's different about this program is that some universities have restrictions at the four-year level on TSAP students that other universities don't have. For example, at IU Bloomington, not all of the IU branch campuses, but at IU Bloomington specifically, students who complete a TSAP associate degree currently can only enroll at the beginning of the fall semester. They can't enroll in the spring if they're in a TSAP program. So that has to do with course, it has to do with course sequencing and when courses are available. And so that's just one of the restrictions that exists at IU that doesn't exist at the other four-year universities. So it's important for students to be aware of that, obviously, as they plan out their program. Let's scroll up a bit. There are also some universities, four-year universities, who do not have the degree that a student may want to get. So, I mean, just like any student searching for institutions, when it comes to TSAP, there are 19 different program areas with a TSAP degree, an associate degree, but some four-year universities don't have that program. So of course a student is going to need to choose a four-year institution that offers the bachelor's degree that they're looking for. I'm trying to stay out of the weeds with some of the details on this, but we can, of course, I'll be happy to respond to some questions. Let's see here. I want to highlight number 4 a bit. Each public four-year institution in Indiana with a comparable program will develop a two-year program for completion of a baccalaureate degree for a student who transfers with an associate degree from a TSAP program. So again, the student needs to have that knowledge that the four-year institution that they want to go to has the comparable program. And students in a TSAP program are expected to meet the same requirements as students who start there. So the whole program is based on the idea that, again, the competencies that a student gets in their first 2 years at Ivy Tech or Vincennes match the competencies that the student would have obtained had they gone to the four-year university as a freshman. A lot of times high school counselors and guidance counselors and principals, teachers are interested in, will AP credit count, will CLEP credit count, will dual credit count, and number 5, you can see that the answer to that is yes. But working with an academic advisor is essential. Kind of talked about number 6 earlier. Cumulative GPA will meet the standard graduation for an associate degree at Ivy Tech, and the 30 hours of the STGEC are included within the TSAP degree, but that 2.0 most likely will not be enough for a student to get into their academic program of choice. And of course, that's even more true in some of the very highly competitive programs like engineering, where a student really needs to be looking towards getting at least, I would say, a 3.0. Okay. This really gets me to where I want to turn it over to the team here for questions. But I just want to mention that, again, any student now who is in high school and wants to go to college within the state of Indiana certainly should be aware of the TSAP program, especially if they're wanting to get a 4-year degree, but they need to try to save some funds. We definitely understand that some students are going to want to go straight to the 4-year institution and complete the entire program there. We don't believe that this is a program that every student in Indiana should take, but we definitely are excited about the fact that this program and this initiative is making transfer much more seamless than it used to be. There's always still pockets of challenges. Terry Lambert and others that we've worked with closely on this are fully aware of those challenges. But the fact of the matter is this TSAP program is making transfer better in Indiana. We've had 3,390 completers so far of the TSAP program at Ivy Tech. And those students are going on to a 4-year institution, and the transfer process is getting much more seamless than it used to be. So I'd be happy to respond to questions. You can go back to anything you saw that you want to see again if I can find it, and I'll turn it back over to the team to field questions.
Yeah, Russ, we've had a few questions so far, but before I ask those, we are up to around 90 participants on the call. So if you have a question, I think the best way to do this, just in interest of unmuting everyone's mics, please submit your question through the chat function, and I'll make sure we ask all of those. So Russ, the first question I think you answered after this question was asked, but I do want to make sure that they hear the answer again. Has every public ed institution expressed an interest in this?
Well, every public education institution in Indiana, to be real direct, has no choice but to express an interest in it. This was not optional for public institutions. And I emphasize public, meaning state supported. By the way, that does include Purdue Global, as well as Purdue. But this legislation basically stated that any state-supported 4-year institution that has a comparable program is required to participate.
Okay, great. The second question is a little bit lengthy, but how do we get universities to honor this agreement of accepting credits? Some schools still dig their heels and not accepting the credits. What guidance can we give our students when they go to enroll in classes their freshman year?
Okay, first of all, sometimes what appears to be on the part of the institution to be not, the 4-year institution, what appears to be non-compliance turns out to be that the program is a different one than the program that they identified as comparable to our TSAP. Let me give I know this gets technical, but you quickly get into the weeds of details with a lot of these issues. If a 4-year institution has a program in elementary education and they say that they will not accept a TSAP program in elementary education fully, that is an issue that needs to be basically investigated, and the commission is the one who ends up doing that. Not Ivy Tech, not Vincennes. I mean, again, we're not the police on this. But a four-year university in Indiana does not have the right to, and you know, I'm working closely with with all of the four-year institutions, and so I don't want this to sound like it's an adversarial relationship. But if there is a four-year university that simply says, well, you got your TSAP degree in education from Vincennes or Ivy Tech, when you transfer here, we'll give you 45 credit hours. That can't happen. And if that is said, then the Commission for Higher Ed needs to look into that. What often happens, though, is the student may want to go into, let's say, a specific area of business, marketing or finance. The Associate of Science degree in business is not specific to any one area within what business degrees often get to at the four-year level. So many of the four-year universities, IU at the Kelly School as an example, they're required to identify at least one area in that program, that broad program field, that is completely TSAP compliant, but not all of them might be. So I guess I say that to say that if there's an institution that appears not to be complying, it could be because they identified a different program area as being the one that matches to the TSAP. But again, big picture, four-year universities who are state supported do not have the option of simply saying we're not going to be part of this if they have the degree.
Great. And then another question that came in, can you tell us what the difference is between an associate degree in a specific area and a TSAP?
Yeah, they're actually not. TSAP is the broad umbrella overarching term for 19 different associate degrees where TSAP competencies have been developed, where TSAP outcomes have been developed. So the one slide that I showed that showed the different program areas, there is a TSAP associate degree in each of those areas. So again, TSAP is the broad umbrella term. There's an Associate of Science degree in Business Administration. There's an Associate of Science degree in Criminal Justice. There's an Associate of Science degree in Education. And each one of those, and then 16 others, each one of those are TSAP programs. Hopefully that helps clarify that.
Great. And that is all the questions we've received via chat. Does anybody else have any questions for Russ? Oh, we have one more here. When a student graduates with a four-year degree through TSAP, does the degree itself look identical to anyone else, to every other degree?
Yes, it does. And they're getting the exact same degree. The four-year universities did not set up different degrees for TSAP students. In some cases, the sequencing of courses is different. In other words, the final 2 years for a student in a business degree at Ball State, I'm just making an example up, might not be identical for a TSAP student as it would be for a student who started at Ball State. In other words, the junior and senior years might not be identical, but at the end of the road, at the end of the program, they'll get the same bachelor's degree that a student would have gotten had they gone to Ball State all the way through.
Here's another one. When students begin their early college program, looking to make sure all 60 credits transfer, should they or we go to the university website to see if a program has been designated as a TSAP?
Yes, definitely. And I was just looking yesterday as I prepared for this program, and nearly all universities, and I didn't see every branch campus of IU, for example, but I took a fairly cursory look. But each state-supported university has been, as part of the legislation, required to put a link in their website about the TSAP programs and which specific program areas are available through TSAP at their university. And I know I saw something for Southern Indiana, I saw IU's, I saw Purdue, Ball State. So they have put on their website as well the program areas and kind of their specific requirements that students need to be aware of for if they want to start out and get their TSAT degree at Ivy Tech or Vincennes. So I would definitely encourage, strongly encourage students and counselors to go to those different websites. Now, the Commission for Higher Education also, through the Transfer In website, is trying to capture that information so it can be in a single source document, and students don't have to go to every separate university webpage. But it's definitely advisable, in fact, almost essential, that for a student to feel confident that they're taking courses, you know, in those first 60 hours that are going to transfer, and more specifically that the university that they want to eventually graduate from is going to offer that program to go to the websites first.
It looks like that is all the questions we have received. Anybody else have a last minute question?
Kylie, I think folks wanted to know about, would this presentation be sent out? And yes, we are going to send this out to everybody that's on the call, as well as post it on our website. And we also are recording this meeting, so you can also access it that way.
And again, I appreciate that, Jana, and I'm happy to respond to other questions that come up. Again, there are a lot of details with this program. I know it's a little complicated. So one of the things that I've done for quite a few years now is respond to questions that just pop up, a lot of specific circumstances. And there's a lot of details that, you know, we didn't get into that are still important when you're working with individual students. So I'd be very happy to be a resource to anyone who has questions about this as well.
Okay, well, Russ, we really thank you so much for presenting the basics, and I think we all should have a good understanding now of how it works, and glad that you're open to other questions as they come up. So thanks again
Thank
for
you, Sandy.
taking time out of your Zoom life to come Zoom with us. So at this time, I'd like to ask Kylie, our Director of Operations, to talk to you about the upcoming Early College Celebration Week. So Kylie?
Yeah, thank you, Sandy. So I'm hoping this is not the first time that you've heard about the National Early College Week dates for this year, but those dates have been set April 27th through May 1st. SEL wanted to help schools this year, before everything that, you know, external started happening, really put together a nice kit with activities that you could do in your school, social media, but given everything that's going on, we've put our efforts towards creating a social media toolkit that we hope will just be a fun and easy and engaging way for you to highlight your work that you're doing in your schools. So we've sent this out a few ways already. If you're a subscriber to our newsletter, you received this on Monday. We shared it yesterday through our Twitter account, and then it's also on our website. But I'll also include it in the follow-up email from today. But this is a nice toolkit that I can show you a little bit. I don't want to spend too much time, but really lays out examples of things you could do each day of the week. It gives you a focused question for the day and a focused audience with some posts that you could copy and paste, plug in your school name, or you can get more creative and ask your students to record videos, ask your staff. So really, this is just a guide to help you involve your school and make something fun of Early College Week. We have ideas and links to our logo for Early College Week that you can see here. We'd encourage you to use that on your social media platforms. Make sure to use the hashtag Early College Week. That is the national hashtag, so you'll be able to see that along with all the other states participating. And then also make sure to include us, tag us at CellUindy. But we hope this will be a helpful tool, like I mentioned, to really engage your school and kind of celebrate all the awesome things you're doing. And if there's a way that Cell can be a part of your celebration or help you in ways that are not included on this toolkit, please reach out to us, because we want to do all we can to highlight the awesome work that you're doing. At the end of the packet, of the toolkit, you'll find examples you can click on for a press release, a proclamation, access to all of these logos you'll find in this toolkit. So yeah, I'll make sure that you receive this after our call today if you haven't already, but we hope this will be a helpful tool for you.
Okay. Thank you, Kylie. Are there any questions for Kylie about the toolkit? Okay, we really appreciate your work on that, Kylie, and think it's something that schools should be able to make good use of. So, okay, we're going to move on to our panel discussion and just a little bit of background about how this panel was put together, and it was done rather quickly. We just felt that this was a pressing issue for many of you in the dual credit world out there. And so we have brought together panelists, and they were able to clear out their schedules and be here with us, and we're really happy for that. So let me introduce who our panelists will be. This morning we have Terry Lambert, and she is the Director of Transfer In with the Indiana Commission of Higher Education. We have Drew Finley, and he is the Dean of CTE Early College at Vincennes University. We have Nicole Schenkel, and she's the Dean of Academic Early College at Vincennes University. We also have Rebecca Ralschulte, Vice President for K-14 Initiatives and Statewide Partnerships at Ivy Tech. And we also have Troy Byler, who is the Director of ACP Advanced College Project at Indiana University. So we're going to have Janet Boyle, our Executive Director, be the moderator of this panel. Again, as we did in the earlier segments of this webinar, as questions arise, we ask you to put those in the chat room. So Janet, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Sandy. And all of the folks that are panelists for this particular section of the meeting, if you would unmute so you can jump in and help answer questions along the way, that would be appreciated. I've put together 7 questions for our team here to respond to, and I know I haven't covered everything. So again, please post things in the chat, or if something that is said is not clear, please ask us about that, and we will try to circle back and get those. I'll be watching those, as well as Kylie and Sandy, to make sure we have everything. So my first question, though, is for just one of our panelists, and that would be Terry Lambert. And Terry, you have an important position at the Commission for Higher Education. And so you've been in many discussions, both there at the Commission and with the Indiana Department of Education. So could you please give us an overview of the latest thinking on how dual credit is going to be handled for this spring semester, both from the higher education side and the high school side? Terry?
Thank you, Janet, for just this opportunity to join the conversation today and share some things that have been going on kind of behind the scenes for really over a month now. I've been in personal contact with all of our dual credit coordinators at the state institutions and many of the private colleges to discuss what their institutions have been providing their high school partners with, to get their perspective, to find out what kind of supports and guidance are in place. It seems like, I'm sure to many of you from the high school aspect, that higher education institutions were delaying in their decisions and in their guidance. But I want to assure you that really they had huge priorities at the time of ensuring that all of their on-campus students were safe and in a position to begin their transition to online learning. So as you know, the circumstances have been changing daily, and many of the decisions that were necessary to really provide accommodations and ensure equity for all students took some time. One of the major pieces was really updating institutional policies on grading. Most of our institutions have in the past allowed for students to choose a pass-fail option at the college level or some variant of that. But what had to be revised were the timelines and the actual processes that were involved for the administrative side, the faculty, and the student sides, which has taken some time. I believe that now all of those have been determined, at least at the state institutions, and we're working on a document right now to put them all in one location. And we hope that that will be helpful for administrators and students, both at the universities, colleges, and at the high schools with dual credit. Today, we're going to discuss how those changes and options might affect dual credit students. And we hope we're going to be able to answer your questions that are really particular questions around this and how you see it at your high school. The Academic Affairs Unit at the Commission has been meeting regularly with all of the post-secondary academic officers to ensure that these changes in policy and procedures this semester will not negatively affect previous policies towards meeting certificate and degree requirements in accordance with our transfer and articulation programs that have been developed for things like the core transfer library, the statewide transfer general education core, and as Russ so beautifully explained, the transfer single articulation pathways. We want to make sure that all of these changes are still consistent with the previous applicability and prerequisite to major courses, and the applicability to prerequisites and the major courses within the college curriculum. So, you know, as before, this not only applies to students taking their courses on campus, but of course in the dual credit setting. So for each and every one of your dual credit students. Another thing that's been agreed upon is the acceptance of the advanced placement scores on the abbreviated 45-minute exam that College Board is putting out. The scores will continue to be translated to the previously identified equivalencies at the state institutions. So we want to assure you of that because there have been changes in the College Board exam, it won't change what those students will get for their scores of 3, 4, and 5 at the post-secondaries. The Commission is really encouraging all schools and our dual credit providers to continue to make every effort to ensure that students can complete all of these essential learning outcomes and enable them to become fully prepared to succeed in subsequent college courses, whether that be in the fall or whenever they decide to pursue any post-secondary educational opportunities. So their student success is really utmost in every conversation that we have. We worked with the State Board of Education on the flexibility that they put out in the graduation requirements for this cohort of seniors. So the higher education institutions understood exactly what was being done, and we were all working together on that. We've been meeting with the Department of Education, as Janet mentioned. This has been on a daily basis. We've been providing them with information as in input for their FAQs that they've been working on. I'm sure you all have been going to those on a regular basis as they're being updated multiple times a day from your questions that you're submitting from the field and from guidance that's coming down from a lot of the conversations that we're having. We're also working with the Department of Education's technology and data collection team to ensure that the grades and the school reporting that you're working on will be able to reflect the impact of COVID-19. More guidance will be developed, and we're going to try to get that out to you just as quickly as we can. We meet regularly with the Office of CTE within the Governor's Workforce Cabinet to discuss the unique needs of our CTE students and help facilitate conversations to help our dual providers meet those needs. And we'll discuss that, I'm sure, more today, because it's extremely important that we look at what those students are facing. So really, needless to say, all of the state educational agencies are working very closely together to try to provide answers to the questions that all of you have. We truly appreciate your patience as we're trying to make sure that all of the guidance is really in the best interest of students and takes into account both the short-term needs, but really the long-ranging implications. And there are so many facets to look at. So we appreciate this opportunity to get to chat with you about these.
Thank you, Terry. One of the things that you mentioned was getting some communication out to us. So it sounds like a frequently asked question document might be being developed by the commission. So I assume you'll put that on the website, but how else will you communicate this to high schools especially?
That's a great question, Janet. Thank you for pulling that out, because as we are coming up with information, not only will it be on the commission site, but it will also be incorporated into the Department of Education's guidance and FAQs. That really appears at this point to be one of the one-stop places for high schools, for the K-12 sector, to get as much information as they can for their students. So I know that the Office of CTE is also incorporating things in, the state board. So we're trying to work through and utilizing that overarching FAQ that they have.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to start this next question with Terry, but I'd like our other panelists to weigh in as well. Terry, a term I've heard used here recently is the effort to try to unbraid grades. So unbraid the high school and the higher ed grades in terms of dual credit. Could you explain what that means? And then if Rebecca and Nicole and Drew and Troy could let us know how your institutions are handling this, I think that would be helpful.
It's a great question, and I think it's a very timely topic because we've been really having a lot of discussions around this. In the past, many of our post-secondary dual credit providers have what we're using this term braiding the grades. That meaning that the college grade and the high school grade would be the same for the student. And this hasn't been universal, but it's been quite prevalent in practice. So in this semester, there'll likely be cases of students receiving different grades for their high school course than their college course. And I'd like to provide just a brief explanation of why that is, and then let my colleagues from the institutions share additional institutional specific information. As we mentioned earlier, the post-secondary institutions allow for students to choose to have their course graded by pass-fail or some variant of that. And this would be for the post-secondary grade, and that's being extended to dual credit students. And with regard to the academic and technical honors diploma designations, Indiana Code requires that high school students receive a letter grade or higher in certain classes and maintain a cumulative GPA of a B in all courses. So if pass-fail grades were issued at the high school level, it could make students ineligible for these honors diploma. So the Department of Education is highly discouraging the use of pass-fail for those secondary grades. They also have mentioned and want to remind schools that utilizing pass-fail grade at both post-secondary and secondary could have an impact on NCAA requirements. And I believe the guidance from the Department of Education that was issued earlier this month does go into some additional detail on that. So hopefully that kind of explains the braiding and unbraiding of grades. But as I said, I know that my colleagues on the panel will be able to explain it even more fully.
Thanks, Terry. Rebecca, would you respond to this question and talk about Ivy Tech's perspective on this?
I'd be happy to. I'll first admittedly say Terry did a wonderful job, leaving not too much left for me to share, other than the fact that through this process of engaging with our post-secondary partners and specifically my counterparts at other institutions, it's been interesting to learn about both our similarities and our differences. And so, yeah, I would just kind of further highlight what Terry shared in regard to, it has not been universal that dual credit, that grades captured on the high school transcript and grades captured on the college transcript were indeed braided. So only a handful of us institutions, including Ivy Tech, I believe Vincennes was another, but I'll definitely allow them to chime in on that. But you know, as we started to think through all of the different grading options, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that through the panel discussion, it just highlighted the necessity for us to really unbraid those grades and ensure that high school teachers could capture the high school grade on the high school transcript and the college grade on the college transcript, with some extended grading options for that college transcript that we'll talk about momentarily.
Sorry, I muted myself. Rebecca, thanks for that. Drew or Nicole from Vincennes, would you like to share about how Vincennes is treating this?
Sure. I can let Nicole talk about this.
Thanks, Drew.
I got plenty to talk about later.
Just like Rebecca said, I think Terry did a great job of explaining, and although we've always encouraged the schools to make sure they're using the same grades, in this instance, the need to unbraid the grade is necessary. And so we're kind of going right along with the same process that Ivy Tech has mentioned as well.
Thanks, Nicole. And Troy, do you have anything to add in terms of what IU is doing with ACP?
Sure. And first of all, I want to thank Sel, Sandy, and Kylie for inviting me to the panel. And I want to thank everybody in this meeting today for your role in continuing education for all of our Indiana high school students. I appreciate that. Thank you. It's a different time now, and I know that everybody's doing a little bit of extra work in order to do that. So, so yes, it's mostly been our policy at ACP to keep the grades unbraided. We've always had told our ACP instructors to keep a separate grade for high schools as well as the universities. So that part wasn't too much of a challenge for us coming into this situation. But we have developed, which we'll get to here in a second on our panel today, we've developed some grading options based on what has come out from Indiana University and the College of Arts and Sciences, and try to unify new options that our teachers are going to have to offer their students. So I'll get to that at a later time. So thank you.
You're welcome. So the next question is for any of you, all of you. What have you communicated or will be communicating to your high school partners about how to handle the rest of the semester in terms of dual credit courses?
Well, I guess I can go first.
Okay, you jump in.
In general, our official policy just went out today. But in general, the hope is that everyone do their best to complete and meet all learning objectives for the courses. First and foremost, that's what I think all of us have communicated to our partners, to do their very best to meet those objectives. The preference, of course, would be for them to complete and to receive grades, and then everything is wonderful and great. However, that won't always be the case for every single situation. So in those extra situations, we've talked about lab courses were probably the biggest concern, since students are physically unable to complete lab requirements. So coming up with alternative methods on the academic side, coming up with alternative methods to deliver labs, do those types of different things. We've provided guidance to individual instructors on that, and schools on that. On the CTE side of things, it's a little trickier with the bigger machinery. So we've been working in that direction, and we'll talk about some alternatives we've come up with on that idea a little bit later. But then also talking to schools about that after we've unbraided those grades, if it's necessary, offering the option for students to elect to take a pass or no pass on the grade part of the class. So understanding that the high school, of course, will have a grade, but on the post-secondary side of things, that we can accept a pass or no pass, and those are specific situations, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Nicole, can you add anything to that?
No, that was perfect.
Okay. Rebecca, how about you?
Yeah, so we had some communication that went out to schools depending upon when it was sent by the specific K-14 director at the campus that you're affiliated with. It may have gone out Friday, it may have gone out Monday of this week. That communication, there were really three main pieces to that. There was a letter to dual credit teachers and guidance counselors. That was one piece. Along with that was a dual credit grading decision tree. So it led to 4 key outcomes. And that was you follow the pathway and it leads to what the most desired outcome would be, which is award a letter grade. I think across all institutions, I think we're probably pretty universal in saying like the best case scenario is you've covered the learning objectives and you award a letter grade, and we're able to move on. The second outcome would be sort of as Drew described, the opportunity for a student to elect to receive a pass-fail grade. As with pass-fail, there are pros to electing that outcome, and there are cons along with that as well. So that's definitely something that has to be taken into consideration when students might elect to make that decision. The option to receive a pass-fail grade is a student decision at Ivy Tech. So that might be one discrepancy that might exist across institutions that we could definitely talk about later. But for Ivy Tech, it's the student's opportunity to elect the pass-fail. And incomplete is the third option. And again, we can talk about that a little bit later, the circumstances that might require that. And then the fourth grading option is drop. That is not one that we would like to see happen at all. We are dedicated to ensuring that students can successfully complete their dual credit class. We're going to ensure that through any mechanism or means possible, but that is one of the options within our grading model. And then in addition to the letter and the decision tree provided to our schools was also a letter to dual credit students and parents. So we felt it was really important for the students and parents to be aware of how dual credit classes are being handled this semester and how grades will be awarded. One, to provide a degree of maybe relief, hopefully relief, that they'll be able to successfully complete those classes, but also to give them some guidance around those pass-fail options that are afforded to them. We are also on Friday, and hopefully all of those on the call that are affiliated with Ivy Tech receive that memo. On Friday, we will be having a dual credit grading webinar. There's a registration link out there, and we are close to, I think, 150 people already signed up for Friday's webinar. So we'll definitely make sure that that information gets out to everyone as well. So.
Thanks, Rebecca. Troy, anything from IU in terms of how you are communicating to your high school partners?
Excellent, thanks. And I'm going to first underscore what both Drew and Rebecca said, and that is we are encouraging all of our partners as much as possible to do what is necessary to award the letter grades. That will, if it's attainable, that will solve a lot of the problems. But we also know that given the new situation that we're all facing, that there might be impediments to that. And so, as well as the grade options that came down from Indiana University, the College of Arts and Sciences, to kind of give an option to students to fulfill, to get IU credits for their work. And that is, first and foremost, is what IU is calling satisfactory fail. And I want to make sure that it's clear, because ACP is not awarding pass-fail or awarding satisfactory fail, which is dealt with differently in the registrars of different campuses and institutions. For us, the satisfaction fail grade, if students get the satisfaction grade, the satisfactory grade, they will be able to fulfill the requirements of those courses and go on to the next level here at IU Bloomington. And we're also advising the students to check with the campuses that they're planning to go to if they're not going to Bloomington, to make sure that that would transfer and count towards those grades. Towards this end, we've worked closely for the last month with our faculty liaisons, and they've been great in working with the departments to create their abridged course requirements. And then we've sent those out, those customized abridged course requirements, to our instructors at each of those courses, containing also our unified grading options that they have. And those went out last 2 weeks ago to the instructors. We then also sent out another email to all of our ACP students explaining the grades options that they have available to them. And with all of these correspondences, again, first and foremost on top is try to do everything you can to get the letter grade. But we know that's not possible. So with those course-specific requirements, they have to maintain the minimum requirements for the learning objectives in order to be eligible to receive the satisfactory fail grades. And if that's not the case, then as Rebecca mentioned, there is the last option, which is the drop option. We're not getting an incomplete option at this point, but there's a drop option. And we're in a position, we've checked with our registrar, that we will be able to go back and retroactively withdraw these students and give tuition back for that if they're not able to attain the grades. It's been wonderful to see the flexibility built in at all the levels in order to accommodate and to acknowledge the work that students have done up to this point and under these certain situations. We also lastly have sent out an email to all of our ACP partner schools, principals and counselors, explaining all the other emails that we sent to the students and to our ACP instructors, so that everybody's informed as what's going on. Now, there are going to be some changes, I'm sure, when we're looking towards the Indiana Department of Education and coordinating what these grades mean for everybody involved. So hopefully there's some flexibility built into that as well going into the future. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Troy. We have a great question here for the whole group. Thanks, Danielle, for this. Here's the question. You've specifically talked about unbraiding grades with the pass-fail scenario. However, does this also apply to, for instance, a student receiving an A or B for the high school grade under the new DOE 30 to 45 minute standards, but say a C based on how they've met the college standards? Would somebody like to answer that one for us?
Well, I can. I honestly don't see where that kind of scenario, that kind of discrepancy would exist. And anyone who contradicts this, feel free to jump in. In general, when we see a discrepancy between a high school and a post-secondary grade, we're talking about a minus or a plus or something to that effect. So A minus to A plus and A, C minus and C, that type of thing. I can't imagine a scenario where a high school instructor gives an A for a high school class and gives a C for the post-secondary side, unless they were directed to do so. Maybe like saying they completed the course a month early. The school said you will take the third quarter grade, and then students finish out maybe for the rest of the semester and then actually earn a different grade. I think that's probably the only scenario I can think of. Can you guys think of any other?
That could be a scenario and that could come up, but in this situation too, we also, and I think most of the institutions, post-secondary education that are doing dual credit also have this possibility for our students at the end can also request a satisfactory fail grade after they see their final grade for their course. So if at the end they're saying, hey, this is not what I was expecting, they could still then request the satisfactory fail grade. So if there's still a way for the student to mitigate some things that were out of their control, if there is a big discrepancy between those two grades.
I have a response here from one of our people in the audience, Laura Brazil, said, we've told our high school instructors they may have to assign 2 different grades. our district said we could not lower grades for extended learning. So if a kid left school March 13 with an A but did nothing else, the high school grade has to stay an A, but college grade may go down. And I know Laura's district's not alone in saying that grade or quarter 3 is the one that is going to count right now. So any response to that?
This is Terry, and I believe that in the guidance that was released from the Department of Education on April 6th, because we had an impact in that guidance and specifically on this point, there is a point about grading practices should never be punitive. Consider setting a policy that bases a letter grade on the previous body of work while allowing a grade to be raised or lowered based on evidence during the extended remote learning time. This will ensure greater equity for all students, particularly those who may be lacking resources and supports. So according to the Department of Education, that grade could go up or down.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that?
Janet, this is Jacqueline.
Hi, Jacqueline.
And I know I'm normally not on these meetings, but I did want to go ahead and just say out loud what I typed into the chat box, because what we're hearing in Southwestern Indiana, many of our district partners have canceled final exams for their high school students. And these students are missing instructional time. So yes, there is sort of the possibility that they could continue to work. There are also students who have done nothing since they left their buildings. And then there are dual credit students who perhaps are not taking finals for their high school grades, but they are being required to take the USI final for their USI grade. And so there is a scenario where a student could get a fairly large discrepancy in that final grade because of perhaps doing poorly on the university final, which might be weighted at a larger percentage of the final grade than it would be in the high school setting.
That makes sense. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else? I have another question if not. Well, here's a new question for the panel. Does the awarding of letter grades apply to online courses that are dual credit courses that students might be taking from a post-secondary institution with a university professor? Still saying it's a dual credit course though.
So that question confuses me a tiny bit because it's difficult for me to differentiate whether we're talking about a true dual credit course or a dual enrollment course. I will say though that for the most part, the practices of our on-campus grading mirrors the processes for our dual credit grading. So we've provided some additional tools and resources for dual credit students, like the decision tree and things like that we haven't necessarily provided for on-campus faculty, but we are still extending both letter grades and pass-fail grade options, incomplete options, and drop options for our dual enrollment students as well.
Okay, thank you. And James, did I say, James Hendricks, did I pose that question accurately for you there? James might have left. Okay, let me go on to some other questions for our panel. Are there any plans to help students make up or finish content this summer? Vincent, do you have any plans for summer action?
I think Drew's going to tag me. I'm looking at him, and
Yeah,
I think
okay.
he's gonna tag me, and I'm going to tag him.
Try not to monopolize this, but I mean, I can go ahead and go. So I'm jumping over to the CTE. So if we want to come back to an academic plan, because sometimes that might be a little bit different. But on the CTE side, Rebecca and I have talked, and we've all have talked at different levels, and the chancellors and presidents have talked, and we're going to look at trying to coordinate resources and allow students in career and tech ed who have not completed their lab requirements, say in welding or auto body or something like that, to be able to elect to finish in the summer. Now we haven't worked out all the fine points and details of that. The big hurdle that I think we all are aware of is that there may not be a summer. So that is something that we're all very concerned about. But we're going to go with the idea that the restrictions will be lifted, students will be able to finish and can actually go and then take advantage of BU resources, Ivy Tech resources, and Career and Tech Ed Center resources. So that's, of course, the ideal scenario.
Mm-hmm. So Drew, if let's say a high school is a partner with Vincennes, but Vincennes doesn't have a campus or equipment nearby, you're saying that if Ivy Tech is there, they could use that equipment or the Career Center. Is that accurate?
Yes, and I think this would be, and keep in mind, we haven't really developed the fine details at this point, but that would probably be a scenario where students would start at one institution, finish up the requirements at another, and then receive a pass-fail type of situation rather than letter grades, because we can't figure out where they did or what, started out at the Ivy Tech and did this part of welding and then finished it. The instructor would say, yes, they've met the requirements of the outcomes for both of these courses, and we would award the credit at that point in time.
Okay, that makes good sense.
And keep in mind, very loose details right now.
Right, I know. Like we keep saying, things change every day.
Yes.
So in terms of the academic side of the house, Nicole or Rebecca or Troy, do you want to weigh in on that? For in terms of summer?
We haven't talked a lot about, because of course the hope is that the students will complete with the grade or a pass fail. I think it's one of those instances where if we're seeing that there will be a need to offer some type of summer, if we have a summer, that we can offer some options for them in the summer, whether it be online or what have you. So we're just kind of playing things by ear with that, but leaving that as an option if necessary.
Thank you. I think that's what we all are doing, is plan A, B, and C here as we go. Rebecca, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say, like, we are jumping into this with the similar thought to what Troy had shared earlier, that we think that those students that are enrolled in academic courses, so liberal arts and science classes, are going to be able to successfully complete and are not going to need incomplete grades. It's the CTE areas where there are CTE labs embedded in industrial certifications or clinical and practicum hours, where we think that these incompletes may need to be awarded, just because they're such crucial elements of those courses. They make those courses. And as Drew described, I admittedly am really excited about this sort of linking arms concept between Vincennes, the Office of CTE, and Ivy Tech, to make sure that we can find a way, regardless of institution, we can find a way to ensure that these dual credit students, again, can earn the credit that they so deserve. And we can find a way by combining resources, facilities, staffing, to make sure that this can become a reality. I know that the Office of CTE sent out a survey, so they were surveying Career Center directors to see the potential availability of resources in the summer. So as we start to gain, what are our resources, we can think about the specific details of what a completion institute in the summer might look like.
Okay, thank you. That would be a great concept if that could come to pass.
Can I add one thing, Janet? I'm sorry. We kind of forgot about the seniors that are going to be going to another campus to complete a degree anyway. So those in general will be okay. So like if they were planning on completing at Ivy Tech or completing at BU and actually enrolling in those colleges, we'll come up with makeup sessions and make sure that they complete. The real hard part was the seniors who weren't going to enroll in those institutions, and then providing resources for them as well.
That makes sense. I've got a question for, it looks like mostly Ivy Tech, maybe a little bit of VU. This is from Danielle Adams. So this isn't so much a question as just a statement to see that, is this accurate? In such options, Ivy Tech and VU, from what we've been told, will be following up based on the learning objectives students missed per the form dual credit instructors are filling out. As for labs and such, my understanding is that it will depend on when the quarantine and stay-at-home order is lifted. Another option Ivy Tech told us for CTE certification-based courses is that they can get an I for incomplete, and then Ivy Tech is responsible for paying and figuring things out to get those learning objectives met. Any comment on that? Rebecca, is that accurate?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, we would be responsible, and again, in combination with Vincent's and the Office of CTE, we've talked about Perkins funding. I think there's been some legislation regarding the ability to access that funding for a longer period of time than maybe historically has been available. So all of these that's sort of the linking arm, like we're all going to look at what different types of resources we have, but when it comes down to it, we're going to make sure that our students get what they need to complete, and it wouldn't be necessarily the financial responsibility of the high school to figure that out. That would be.
That's great. Thank you.
Janet,
Yes.
Janet, this is Terry. Just another point I want to make. I think all of our post-secondary institutions are very well aware that students are going to be coming in, and especially I speak more to the liberal arts side of the house, with potentially some gaps in knowledge. And I think that that's one of the things that they're already working on, is how to ensure that students are placed in the proper courses and how to ensure that they get up to speed, shall we say, so that they're not disadvantaged from this. So I think that that's one of the things that everyone is looking at and acknowledging right from the start. And again, they do not want to see the students penalized for something well beyond everyone's control.
Thank you, Terry. And that kind of goes back to, Troy mentioned impediments, Rebecca did too, and in conversations the last couple of days with 15, 20 high school principals, every one of them was worried about, they said it varied from 25 to 40% of their students are not doing anything in terms of remote learning or instruction. They just aren't checking in. They aren't, they're still on spring break in their heads, or have assumed that the semester is over. So I know the high schools are doing lots of different things to try to round those kids up and ensure that they take it seriously. Is there anything else a higher ed partner can help that high school with in terms of sending home that message that it's important to complete? That I didn't have that question to you earlier, so that I'm asking you that off the cuff.
I can definitely say from the early college side, that is something, Vincent has really pushed with our administrators at the sites, is to ensure that, one, our partner administrators understand the importance and the supports and the various solutions to some of the problems that there might arise. We had some that maybe didn't have an LMS that they could use. We provided Blackboard options for them. So we've really worked very hard to make sure that schools understand and have that message, that our real goal is to make sure that our students have access to complete the learning objectives on dual credit, and that we were willing to work with them in any way possible to ensure that those students get that option or get that access. And I know Ivy Tech has done that as well. And Rebecca, feel free to jump in on that.
Yeah. I'm glad you noted that, Drew. I mean, I think the tools and resources, and there's so many vendors out there that have products that they're sort of releasing for free, and we know in the end, like, their goal is that we get hooked on them and we want to actually purchase them. But they are making those accessible, and I know both Vincent's and Ivy Tech, and I'm sure IU as well, have been sort of pushing out these tools and resources to our dual credit teachers to make sure that they have them for integration into their learning platforms, and to get their students exposed to them. I would just to add one additional piece to sort of that motivation factor. I think in addition to our dual credit teachers and administrators and guidance counselors who are working really hard to engage students, I think too it's that parent piece. And so that's why that letter, I think, was also really important for us to get out to students. And I know our K-14 directors are disseminating that through various means. Some are emailing it to parents, some are mailing actually physical postal service mailing it to students' homes. So, that's just another reminder, right? Like it's still going on, guys. Like you might not be logged in, but it's still happening, and we need to be sure that we're making you aware that if your student wants to earn credit, they need to be engaging in this course.
Yep. Thank you.
Janet, I think we've got a couple of our other dual credit coordinators online with Jacqueline and with James. And I just want to say from all of the conversations that I've had, each of the institutions that are partnering with high schools is working very, very hard in making those same type of things available, promoting that same line of conversation that school is not over, that there's still plenty of time to learn, and they want to do everything they can to ensure student success. So we have such a marvelous group of dual credit coordinators in our state, and we work together so well. And I just want to say that this is just a sampling of some of them, but the message is still the same that's out there from all of them, that they really want to see these students finish, and they want to provide whatever supports they can do to make it happen for them. So.
I want to quickly add, with our sites, we have administrators that are housed at the sites. And so they have even gone further in making sure they're holding virtual audit meetings with the students and parents, especially the seniors, because they're so close to finishing, and want to reassure them and make sure that they don't let up off the gas, that they need to complete, and showing them exactly if they complete, you will finish with this credential. And so they've been holding those meetings over the past week or so with them to make sure that they are completing as well.
That's a great idea, and tickled you're doing that as well. Any other comments from our panel on that whole issue of supporting the kids?
I just want to point one thing out too, and it has to do with also, again, getting back to the flexibility of our individual departments and faculty members to accommodate these things. We've had our chemistry liaisons have done several Zoom meetings with their ACP instructors, and have told them that they're putting together on Canvas final for them to take, and not everybody has Canvas as a learning LMS, but then they said that we had one teacher that said, well, I have a student that has no internet connection. Well, they're mailing them the paper copy and having their parents sign that the student took it at this time, and they're mailing them back. So these are it kind of warms my heart to know that people are out there understanding the importance of trying to bring equity to the students that don't have that capacity, even if there is another alternative to have access to that. So this is going on at every level, and it really takes the sting out of the crisis we're in, is how people respond to this in order to give our students a chance to get these grades and to get recognition for the work that they've done. That's all I want to say.
Well said, Troy. Thank you. Drew, this next one's for you. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to add about CTE dual credit, but I know certifications are kind of hanging for some of the kids, the seniors, in terms of completion and things. Is there anything else to add on that, or any other aspect of CTE dual credit?
You mean as far as like industry recognized certifications? Or,
yes.
Honestly, I don't know. Terry, have we actually come across as a state with any guidance on the industry recognized certification? Has there been any updates on any of those, or are they just all requirements have to be met and boom?
It's a great question, and I rely completely on the Office of Career and Technical Education with the Governor's Workforce Cabinet. And Tony Harrell, if you are not on his weekly email, you need to get on his weekly email, because every Wednesday, I believe it's when the days all kind of flow together, don't they? I think it's every Wednesday, we get an update from him, and he will provide the latest information on things like the certifications, and if there have been any modifications on clock hours or certain requirements. And that to me has been our biggest go-to for the latest and greatest source of information.
Thanks, Terry. And I think in general, as far as a general answer to the question, most entities, organizations have been very gracious and have allowed extended time for completion on a lot of things. While not reducing the standards, I know in general there's been an extended time across the board on a lot of things. Where we run into real issues are on those very defined, very narrow criteria, and I think that's where we might have some issue on some of the certifications. But as far as completion of certificates of graduation, or Rebecca, what is it ITech calls them? Not the certificates of graduation, your 30-hour technical certificates.
Certificates and technical certificates.
Yeah, I think in general, when our students are able to meet the lab requirements for some of these, those will still be available and still petitioned, and students will still be able to complete.
Okay. Anything else on CTE? Rebecca, anything additional? Okay, sounds good. Folks were just asking about the link to Tony Harrell's weekly announcements, and I think Sandy will send that out to you if she doesn't find it before our call's over. We'll put it on the chat feed here if we can find it.
Janet, I'm working on that right now because it's the JOT form, and I'm just going to put the link in the Zoom chat.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you so much. I've got a new question. This is from Jessica Mann up north. I'm thinking about current freshmen and sophomores in dual credit courses. They will be applying to college several years after COVID-19. Since letter grades are available to them, I'm concerned about what a grade of satisfactory or pass messages to college admissions officers in a few years. Is it your understanding that this intention to hold harmless will persist? Terry, that might be a good one for you.
I think that that's one of the really important questions. We've been so very focused on our seniors, as we should be, but I think that one of the reasons that documentation of this semester being so important, and why we're working on guidance in print to say, yes, you know, the institutions are going to stand by equivalencies and stand by these, you know, odd circumstances that the semester has ended. I think that's why this is so important. Also, that grades are reflected a certain way on the transcript, and that's one of the conversations we're going to have, I believe, later today or tomorrow with the Department of Education to ensure, because we know that right now we can't imagine that we're going to forget the spring of 2020 and that we're going to forget about any of this. But 5 years down the road, when admissions offices have, you know, people working in them that, you know, are new and don't really understand that this was a certain circumstance that, you know, you have to look at. I think that's why this is so important, the documentation, and that we follow through and ensure that policies and all types of processes are documented so very, very well, so that those students will not be disadvantaged, because they should, you know, they're still dual credit students taking college credit from a university or college under those same guidelines. So hopefully that answers your question.
Great, thank you. Anybody else have anything to add to that? Okay, this is my last question that I had written up beforehand, so the rest of you out there listening, fire into the chat room if we're missing anything. But this question is about, at this time, April 15th, none of us have a good handle on, are we going back to school in the fall? And so I know high schools and school districts, as well as all the higher education institutions and our state agencies, are trying to come up with plans A, B, C, et cetera. So can any of you share what your institution or agency is thinking at this point in terms of fall? Given that we don't know what it is, but I mean, anything you can share.
Rebecca, you want to go first?
No, she doesn't.
Okay, I can say in general, we're all hoping for the best outcome, which is plan A is that business will be as usual, students will be allowed to go on campus, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think the plan B for most institutions is to better implement what we did in the spring. I know we all rushed to get things online and do things and get our whole institutions to do online learning. I think that would probably be the plan B in general for most institutions. I hope we don't end in a spot where we need a plan C, to be really honest, because I think given what we've learned here in the spring, how quickly we've all pulled this together. I know as an institution, we were very focused on getting all of our instructors online. Some of our instructors were, some of them weren't. It was a big, massive undertaking. And now that the pain has already happened, I think even if we end up in a similar secluded situation in the fall, I think we'll be much more ready and able to do online delivery. I think the big key is identifying students who don't have that capability, and how do we still deliver quality dual credit instruction to students who may not be able to get online. I think that would be the biggest challenge for fall.
Great. I agree. Rebecca, now it's your turn, or Troy.
I think Drew did a great job. I don't think we're quite there yet. We just started to have, and we just made decisions about summer. So we're just starting to now have conversations about what fall might look like. But I just think there's so much up in the air. It's really just hard to come up with any conclusions this early on.
So true. Troy, anything?
Yeah, we've at ACP, we're doing all of our new instructor summer training online, and we've made a decision that all of our professional development days, site visits will also be in the fall online. We're just going to go ahead and plan for that, hopefully with the idea that what we learn, a little bit of growing pains during the summer training, that we can apply to our fall professional development days. I think several departments in the institution, Indiana University, is also thinking what will happen if there is any kind of disturbances, either at the beginning, middle, or end of the semester. And I think it's wise to start planning for those contingencies and being prepared for it. So we are also have to start thinking too, everybody involved, of we need to start teaching our students how to learn in an online environment. Not only just providing them the tools necessary for them to get education through an online platform, but also they've grown up, most of them in brick and mortar schools, learn, this is the type of learning that they're accustomed to. But we also have to start thinking as institutions of higher education, how to go about teaching our students to get the most out of online education as well. So that's part of the process. I think this is a crisis in a sense, but we're going to be learning a lot of techniques, pedagogies that maybe were on the peripheral for a long time, and learning how important those are, not just in a crisis mode, but also for all of education going on. This is one of the positives that could come out of this crisis. At least I'm hoping.
Yeah, I agree, Troy. Very much. I think we're going to learn a lot of lessons from this, and hopefully some positive ones that will emerge. If you haven't seen it, on the chat room is the link, to Tony Harrell's listserv, and we'll also send that out. Sandy will send that out in our follow-up as well. So panel members, we're drawing to a close here. I'll ask each of you, do you have anything else that you'd like to add to our discussion, anything you haven't gotten to say? So Terry?
I just want to echo the comments about thanking, first of all, Sel, for convening this. It would have been easy to say we have so much else going on, let's put it off. I think this was extremely timely. I hope that it was very helpful for all that dialed in today, because we understand how many questions are out there and how we are trying our hardest to get answers. But again, I can't stress enough that we want to make sure that the answers that go out are in the best interest of the students, and that look at not only short-term but long-term, and that we are all working together. I think, you know, talking about what was just mentioned about the good that has come out of this, I think to see not only state agencies working so closely together and in lockstep, but I think seeing where our institutions are really coming forth to go above and beyond, and to provide opportunities that we never would have dreamed of maybe, you know, 6 months ago or a year ago. I think that's so admirable, and I think it's not, you know, dwelling on resources or any of that. It's saying, we can do this, let's get it done, how can we do it? And I think that's, again, I commented about the dual credit coordinators because they all know that they're like my favorite group I get to deal with, because I think that that's always been the fact that they all are in this for the good of the students, and they want to see students succeed. So I think that their fine qualities are just shining through beautifully. So thank you all for that.
Thanks, Terry. Drew, anything you need to add or like to add?
No, I just think maybe it's just one of those things that I think this crisis has really pointed out, like we were saying earlier, some of the amazing things that people have done, creative ideas. Seems like all of the institutions are, you know, while we may differ on a few little points on procedure or policy, but the goal, the vision, I think we're all in the same boat. I think it's just been an amazing pull together time to really get students across the finish line.
Yeah.
I think, you know, schools have really dealt with a lot. They have a lot of hurdles. You know, even just something as simple as free reduced lunch and still allowing students to have access. I just think we've done an amazing job as education institutions, as post-secondary institutions, on just really getting students over the finish line. It's been an amazing thing.
Thanks, Drew. How about Nicole? Anything to add to your partners?
Just echoing some of the things he said, and just appreciative of the collaboration that we've been able to do with our colleagues and our other post-secondary institutions, but just appreciative of all the hard work of our secondary partners as well, because we know this is such a tough time, and everything that everyone is willing to do, and all in the name of making sure our students are successful and safe and getting what they need. And so I've been really appreciative of that as well. And then all of our staff, our wonderful staff that we have employed to do so many things and have stepped up to the plate and rolled with the punches on so many things. But I think Troy kind of alluded to this, that this is going to change the way that we do a lot of things in the future. So, and not for, I mean, I think it's going to be for good, a good positive change on how we do education in the future on both post-secondary and secondary. So, and appreciative of you, Janet, and your team for bringing us together.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nicole. Troy, anything to add to the group?
Yeah, I'd be remiss if I forgot to thank you, Janet. Thank you for moderating this.
Thank you. And then Rebecca.
Yeah, and I think, you know, just, I mean, the level of appreciation is just, it's really hard to put into words how appreciative we are, and how I feel like really just inspired by seeing people just lean in, you know, without controversy, without competitiveness, without, you know, all of those factors. Really just people are just leaning in. Like, how do we make sure we do what's right for students? You know, they are number one in all of this, right? And so we've just seen that happen across all of our internal and external stakeholders. And you know, it's just, it's also really exciting. You know, dual credit students are our students, and dual credit teachers are our faculty. So I think that's also been a really great thing to see is really people, you know, stepping up maybe more so than ever to say, like, you know, we got to make sure these students are successful. We got to make sure these faculty are successful. We got to make sure that everybody has the tools and resources they need. And honestly, it wouldn't really the convening aspect of it all too wouldn't be possible without CHE, CEL, the Office of TT, all these different groups that have, DOE, all these different groups that have really, made it possible. So just thank you all for all that you do, and we truly appreciate you.
Thanks, Rebecca, and thanks to all of our panel today. You did a wonderful job, and you fielded unexpected questions as well as the questions we sent you a little bit ahead of time. I just want to echo what everyone has just ended with in terms of the great collaboration we're seeing, and there's room for more, quite honestly. I mentioned earlier that being on several calls with groups of high school principals, and each of them took time to share what they are doing to handle commencement and how to handle prom and what to do about kids that aren't logging in. And just in an hour or so, folks pick up ideas from each other. And we need to do more sharing like that to, a good idea for one school is often a good idea for many schools. So, we here at CEL are going to try to encourage and foster some more of that networking and collaboration as we go forward. So thanks to everybody, higher ed, high schools, state agencies for pulling together. And I'm almost tired of hearing it said on the networks, we're in this together, but we really are. And we have to be if we're going to survive this as a society and move forward in a progressive way. So I'm going to turn this back over to Sandy. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, great job, everyone. And if you'll hang with us just a little bit longer, we're going to be done before noon, so that's a good thing. But we do have some final wrap-up conversation we would like to have. We are in the midst of beginning an exciting grant that's federally funded, and Janet is the lead on that. So Janet, you're not done talking yet. If you would jump back on and talk a little bit about the RECON grant, just briefly.
Sure. What is RECON? RECON stands for the Rural Early College Network. And CEL was fortunate to receive a federal EIR grant this fall for the next 5 years. We have $7.9 million to work on this project. We've got many goals, many objectives in the project, but what we're trying to do is help schools accelerate implementation and then endorsement as an early college. And we're going to be tracking kids, we're going to be tracking schools, et cetera. But we have what we think is a unique approach to this, where we have 5 mentor schools that are already endorsed rural early colleges. And this year they were paired with a partner school, and that partner school is being helped by the mentor as well as the CEL team to try to help move them faster through the implementation and then eventual endorsement process. But we're doing lots of other things too. We're helping the schools with their education workforce needs, and we are also looking at how do we enhance supports and college going culture, and even start branching into more with the CTE early college. So next fall, we'll have an additional 5 schools join us, and they've already been named. So that'll be a total of 15 schools in the fall. And then the year after that, another 5 schools. And that's where, if any of you on this call are from a rural high school and you are interested in participating in this, you can't be endorsed. But if you are interested in that, we will be having an application process this fall for our last 5 schools. I'm doing a webinar on this coming Tuesday to give more information about the project. So if any of you dual credit coordinators out there or higher ed folks know some schools that would be great to participate in the project, shoot me or Sandy an email and we'd be happy to reach out to them. So thank you, Sandy.
Okay, great job. We also tied into this to be eligible for the grant. A school has to have gone through our new schools workshop, and we are doing one of those April 27th. It will be a virtual format, and if any of you are interested, as in those of you who are endorsed, obviously you're not interested, but if you would like to, any of our higher ed partners, you have schools you're working with that you think are ready to consider an early college model, just email me and I'll be glad to send you a link for registration for that. So we also have another big event scheduled for June, and that is the CEL conference. And Kylie, if you could just talk a little bit about that, that would be great.
Yeah, so let me turn my camera on for you. Our conference is set for June 23rd and June 24th. We have not made any public announcement yet about what that format will look like. We're still moving through the details. Several of you on this call had already registered for that conference. We will still be having the conference June 23rd and June 24th. It will be virtual. We just have not ironed out the details of price, vendors we're going to use to deliver that content. So really the message that we want to say today is just continue to save the dates for June 23rd and June 24th. And stay tuned. We hope to have an email out by next week with a little bit more information. And those of you who have registered, we'll be reaching out to you in terms of, payment and all of that. But yes, please save the date for June 23rd and June 24th. We have an awesome lineup of speakers, keynotes, and breakout sessions that we did not want to cancel the conference because we have such great content to share with you. So it will be virtual, and please save the dates.
Okay, thank you, Kylie. We will be sending out a feedback form after this meeting, and we are sincere in our desire to address the needs that you guys have, and would be glad to host any kind of virtual webinar that you think would be meaningful. So send your ideas in with that feedback form that you're going to receive here after the meeting. So again, I'd just like to see if there are any last minute questions or anything that's lingering out there. So we can all say this: stay well, be healthy, wear your mask, all of that, but especially would like to go back and thank our panelists for sharing with us today, and Russ Baker for educating us on the TSAP program, Kylie for her good work on the Early College Celebration Week Toolkit. And CHE, we're always glad that you're right there with us hand in hand as a great partner. So, okay, everyone, thank you so much, and keep on fighting the good fight.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Bye.
Thanks, Sandy.